This is the first in a series of videos that we're going to do about the inventory functions in QuickBooks. We're going to try to do this in about 4 videos. Inventory is an area where there are a lot of questions. A good percentage of the questions that we get about QuickBooks have to do with using the inventory functions and why are the numbers off, what's the problem, how do I do this, how do I do that. So hopefully we can answer some of those questions in these videos. The first one, is going to be kind of a little bit of an overview how inventory works in QuickBooks and how to get that set up. And then in the next few, we'll cover purchasing, selling, and so forth. So first of all, just a real quick little accounting lesson in inventory. When you purchase inventory, it's not an expense. I get that question a lot, and that's the reason I want to kind of mention that up front. When people will call me sometimes with a question, say, I just bought a bunch of inventory. I know I spent this much money with such and such a vendor, but when I look on my profit and loss statement, it's not there. Well, it's not. It's not going to be there because you still own the inventory. It's an asset to you. It has value. Let's take a look here at a balance sheet. So in this sample file, which has inventory turned on and has inventory on hand, if I look down here, I see the line inventory asset. That is the value of the inventory that I have here to sell. When I sell it, then it becomes an expense because I don't have it anymore, right? Just walking out the door with either the customer or the UPS guy or something. And at that point, then yes, it is an expense. But as long as I have it, if it's on hand, then it has value. It's not an expense. It's right here on my balance sheet. All right, if you're just starting out with inventory in QuickBooks, maybe you're not seeing all of the functions available to you for inventory that should be there. The first thing that you want to do is you want to be sure and check that inventory is turned on. So to do that, I'm going to go to the Edit drop-down menu. I'm going to go to Preferences. And then there's a section right here, Items and Inventory. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to select Company Preferences. And I want to make sure this checkbox right here is selected. Inventory and purchase orders are active. Okay? Until I have that checked there, a lot of the functions of inventory are not even going to be available to me. I'm not even going to see them in my QuickBooks file. So be sure that you get that checked off. Then you'll be ready to go. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the inventory items that I'm going to buy and sell, right? And I'm going to do that on the item list off of the Lists drop-down menu. So here in the sample file, is our item list. There are different types of items. So you can see this section right here. These are all service type items, so services that this sample company sells. There are some items down here that are a type called non-inventory part. So that just lets me buy and sell particular items that I want to sell to my customers, but I want to track how many I've got. So I can use non-inventory type parts. I can buy and sell as much as I don't even have to record when I buy them. I can just sell only, because QuickBooks isn't going to put anything on that balance sheet in that inventory asset account. Everything's going to be a direct expense or a direct income. It's this section right here, inventory part. That's what I want if I want to track inventory. When I create an item and I select in QuickBooks that it is an inventory part type item, then I'm telling QuickBooks, keep track of how many I buy, keep track of how many I sell, keep track of the value of these items. These are inventory, okay? Let's look at one. I'm going to pick the brass hinges item here, right here, this line. I'm going to double click on that, which will bring up the setup window. So again, to repeat, it is really important. I want to be sure that that inventory part, that is the type of item I'm using. Nothing else will make any difference if I don't get that right. Then I want a name for the item. In this case, I've used brass hinges. Now, a lot of people will use a number in there. If they're used to selecting parts and selling parts by number, they may make that the item name actually a number. And that's fine. That's for you. That's not normally what the customer sees. What the customer sees on something like a sales receipt or an invoice is the description down here. So description is standard interior brass hinge, and the item name is just brass hinges. And like I say, it could be a number, it could be anything. Item name is for you, item description is what's going to show to the customer. Once I have those selected, I have a cost field here. That's what I expect to pay when I purchase this to my vendors. Don't sweat that number too much. QuickBooks doesn't do any accounting with that number, so it doesn't matter. You can leave that number blank if you want to, and it won't really matter to QuickBooks, not at this point. Cost of goods sold account. So I want to pick something off my chart of accounts that is a cost of goods sold type of account. That's where the cost is going to go when I sell one of these brass hinges, okay? Preferred vendor, if I want to, that's optional. Sales price, most of the time you probably want a sales price. You can see the sample file here doesn't have one, but you might put one in there. That's what you're going to sell it for when when a customer buys one. Is it taxable? Is it not taxable? You can select that here. Income account. So what is the income account on my chart of accounts where QuickBooks is going to post the sale when I sell it? So if I sell one of these for $7.50, then that particular income account, that's going to show on my profit and loss that I have income for that $7.50 because that's the account I selected here in the setup of the item. There's a third account for inventory type items. That is asset account. This is that inventory asset line we were looking at on the balance sheet just a moment ago, that $30,683. If I buy brass hinges for $3 or $3.50, whatever I buy them for, I buy a bunch of brass hinges and bring those into inventory, this is the account. QuickBooks will add that dollar amount to the balance that I have in this inventory asset account to show that I have that value, that I have that inventory on hand. There's a couple of fields over here, on hand and average cost. I can click all I want to. As I'm clicking the mouse now on those, can't enter that field. I can't change those numbers. Those are set by QuickBooks. So, and that makes sense. QuickBooks is doing the math, right? So it's adding every time I buy some, and it's subtracting every time I sell some. From adding up all of those transactions, it knows that I should have 246 of these on hand. If that number is off by any kind of a significant margin at all, there's probably been an error made. So I know it sounds basic, but a lot of people miss the point that if I'm going to use inventory part type items, if I'm going to track inventory in QuickBooks, I really have to tell QuickBooks every time I buy one, every time I sell one. Otherwise, it doesn't know, and that number becomes meaningless. I can't take a shortcut and create a check for cost of goods sold expense here because I bought 20 brass hinges and I'm in a hurry. And if I do that, then my count is all off and my cost is all off as well, because that's what this field is. This is average cost. This is what QuickBooks uses to do the accounting. When I sell a brass, so even if I buy a brass hinge for $3.50, when I sell a brass hinge, QuickBooks is going to expense $3. Average cost is the way QuickBooks tracks the value of my inventory on hand. If I buy something, let's say I buy a widget for $5, I buy a second widget, same item in QuickBooks for $10. As far as QuickBooks is concerned, I've got two widgets at $7.50 each, average cost. When I sell one of those widgets, QuickBooks is going to expense $7.50. That's why I cannot change this number. QuickBooks is doing the math for the entire history of my QuickBooks file as long as I have had that particular inventory item. And it averages up all those purchases and sales, or all those purchases, sorry, and that's the number that it comes up with. So if I have something that changes in cost a lot, that average cost can maybe become outdated and I'm not happy with the average anymore that QuickBooks is creating. It's too low, you know, if the cost is going up significantly on that item. I may stop using the item at some point and create a new one. Same item, but just create a brand new item in QuickBooks so that that average cost calculation starts all over again. Once I have that, then I have my item, and I'll be able to buy and sell that on the documents that I use in QuickBooks, like bills, checks, invoices, and so forth. We're going to cover that in other videos, but that's kind of a basic of how to get started with inventory in QuickBooks. So thanks for watching.